Welcome to the Grill Focus on AVOD, presented by FilmRise. Thank you so much to TheWrap for having us. I am Daniel Chrisman, SVP of the cross-platform group at Screen Engine ASI.
Hi, I'm Tejas Shah. I'm SVP of Commercial Strategy and Analytics for FilmRise.
FilmRise and Screen Engine began our conversation at the end of 2021 about going on a streaming discovery mission. The timing really could not have been any better, as the majority of SVOD players have reported flattening subscriber growth, and we've all seen heavy hitters like Netflix turning their focus to ad-supported and ad-light models to fuel, or we might say refuel, user acquisition.
Yeah, and this was just an opportunity for FilmRise to better understand who our audience is and understand that within the context of the broader AVOD universe. FilmRise Streaming Network is a collection of 20 plus apps and more than 30 live streaming channels or fast channels. And so, with that diverse slate of content and a significant user base, it's definitely hard to get a holistic view of who our audience is. And so this was this was objected to do that.
The study fielded late Q1 with a very robust sample size, nearly 3,000 consumers of weekly online film and TV content. We, of course, took a special look at FilmRise users and were able to do some really deep dive profiling to go along with our overall mission to uncover fascinating market trends. While embarking on a study of this nature is very broad with lots of organic objectives that we find exciting and entertaining, the potential for surprises adds a bit of a thrill to this entire journey we're on. And to that end, we feel really fortunate that we saw a good balance of kind of expected indicators, but then also some really thought-provoking idiosyncrasies that could help FilmRise and their partners outperform the marketplace.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, the surprises are what I'm here for. We're at FilmRise, we're a very data-driven company, whether it's our content acquisition strategy or our curation and recommendation system and our ability to surface content to our users. But even with all that wealth of data, we still needed an extra lens or perspective on the profile of not just our users, but also the overall AVOD market. So looking forward to getting into some of these insights.
So to kick us off with a really awesome data point here, only 1 in 5 plan to add an incremental SVOD in the next year. So that may be kind of a little bit more in line with our expectations now than when we fielded in Q1, but there just isn't an overwhelming urge among consumers to add more paid subscriptions to their monthly budgets, especially as we kind of head into all of this recession talk. And we know the demand for content is as great now as ever. So this sets up as an extremely favorable story for those involved in ad-supported content creation and delivery.
This insight here is core to FilmRise's business model and our leaning into the AVOD and fast market. We can see, it's anecdotal, but then we can see it in this survey as well. The reticence for our audience to increase the number of services that they have is just really getting costly to this point. And as customers cut the cord, they're used to having the free experience that broadcast networks provide, and FilmRise is aiming to provide the same thing.
All demo groups have migrated away from live TV. I think we kind of all know that to be true inherently. This is one of our favorite slides, but a bit of an eye chart. So look at the top left, maybe start with the total here, and focus kind of on the SVOD, the fast AVOD, and live TV through cable and satellite. The concept of this question was, what is your first touch point when you're in the living room? Where do you start your content journey each and every day? When we asked this in maybe 2010, live TV and DVDs topped that list, but wow, have things really changed, right? The living room has been truly democratized, and that's fantastic news for the fast AVOD players who continue to chip away at and become the default for millions of households.
Yeah, this is one of the most exciting insights to come out of this research. As the cord cutting evolves and continues at a faster rate, quarter by quarter, our aim at FilmRise and the broader AVOD and fast ecosystem is to provide a landing spot for all of these new streamers. And so providing an experience that they're familiar with is really important to us. And clearly, through this data, you're seeing that the audience has been receptive That being said, though, it's also exciting because there's clearly a lot of room for improvement. And kind of going back to the prior slide, where given that SVOD saturation is slowing down, and actually there's even an element of cutting there as well, we're well positioned being a free alternative to both traditional cable television and SVOD services.
We took a look at the how and the where. So while the content delivery methods have changed dramatically, another massive adjustment across the content ecosystem has been around audiences embracing of binging. This will resonate with just about any of us as we wear our consumer hats. We kind of all know that we're engaging in this activity. And when looking at FilmRise specifically, you see the orange bars here. They've done a really admirable job aggregating content that keeps viewers engaged for extended periods of time. That's that 120 plus minute mark. And that's almost a 2-to-1 clip versus some of the other players in this space. So as SVOD platforms have kind of reverted in some ways to that more weekly content delivery approach, trying to build their water cooler, it's a great opportunity for FAST and AVOD platforms to kind of move into that space and pursue even more of the binging market share.
This is what FilmRise prides itself on. Like I mentioned before, we're a data-driven company. So our content strategy, curation, discovery on the app, even the ad experience, it's all driven towards the consumer, providing the most optimal user experience, knowing that our audience over indexes in terms of their hours per sitting is really gratifying and validates our work in this space. Having an engaged user also provides a lot more opportunities to advertisers as well. So it's a value proposition both to the user and to marketers all over the marketplace.
And if you look at FilmRise users across the entire ad ecosystem, looking at the chart here and starting at the top, commercials through a paid streaming service, all the way down to radio, billboards, etc. It's really great to see that FilmRise users are more receptive to ads across the entire advertising landscape. So if you consider that FAST and AVOD platforms have kind of self-selecting user bases that don't mind or even enjoy some ads, FilmRise excels there more than the other platforms. So that makes it an extremely efficient place for brands to communicate directly to the most receptive consumers.
This is really where we need a screen engine. It's difficult to surface this type of an insight based on viewership data. Knowing our audience is showing this kind of receptiveness to ads is great and underscores our audience's value proposition to marketers. And I think as we go forward through this study, we'll see other ways that our audience is best placed for marketers.
And this is where we take a quick look at who is using FAST and AVOD platforms. Overall, I think we kind of hope that ad-supported space bears many of the similarities to the general population, meaning all brands can reach all populations, and that's largely true. But each platform certainly has its own identity based on the curation of the content. FilmRise specifically stands out with greater household income than both the general population and the FAST AVOD users on other platforms, and that means spending power. So that's fantastic to see. And FilmRise also enjoys an ethnic skew for brands looking to reach Black and Hispanic audiences.
FilmRise saw some of this insight in our own data, and it helps inform our content strategy. We want to be able to offer a catalog that appeals to a diverse audience. The fact that it shows a level of spending power as well is really exciting. Again, this plays into our value proposition, showing advertisers that we have a diverse collective and that we continue to enforce our content strategy with these data points to further serve them, drive those hours per sitting, like we mentioned before. It all comes together with what we see right here.
And to further dispel the myth, if it still even exists, the audiences on ad-supported platforms aren't paying for content. You can see from the overlap between AVOD and SVOD that we've hit a critical mass where most people are doing a bit of everything, right? And that sets up really nicely for those in the FAST and AVOD space, or any advertisers that may have had kind of a question about who's left in that slice of the pie that's SVOD only. Placing ads on streaming platforms is great. It's super efficient, and it's a way to hit a massive cross-section of the overall consumer base.
Ultimately, we wanted to see if we can prove that incrementality of FAST and AVOD on top of SVOD. I think this hits it right on the head. As more cutters move to streaming, they're going to expect a similar viewing experience that they were used to in traditional TV. What we provide in AVOD and FAST is that same free experience that broadcasters provide. Our fast channels are 24/7 free live feeds of content. And AVOD provides that optionality, saying, okay, well, if I know exactly what I want to watch, I can go ahead and pick that. We see some of these SKUs developing or skewing closer to FAST and AVOD going forward, as we see some of those late adopters moving over to streaming in the next few years.
Tejas just referenced talking about optionality. Why do users enjoy each content delivery model? This question was asked open-ended, so off the top of your head, why do you like SVOD, AVOD, and cable? On a first glance, this makes total sense. Content selection at the top for SVOD, free for ad-supported, and simplicity for cable. Grab the remote, go. It makes sense. We're going to come back to this slide, so bear with us here. We drilled down a bit more for FilmRise. The top grouping here is the rating for content on FilmRise. Really solid scores across the board. And in general, looking at the bottom bucket, which represents user experience, we see that users are very satisfied with the experience overall. And that really is the lingering question about this space. What is the optimal ad load? And how can platforms ensure ad variety?
There's a lot of speculation around those last two questions. What is the optimal ad load? How can platforms ensure ad variety? It's definitely sort of the holy grail that FilmRise is still trying to achieve. But ultimately, it's nice to see that our efforts are trending us in the right direction. Ultimately, what I see from the content side of things is especially gratifying, where we're not only providing some of that older classic movies and TV shows and a large collection of things that are familiar to our audience, but we're also able to introduce new originals and new releases to our audience.
So coming full circle here, we followed up that open-ended satisfaction question with a list that we let users select from. And what really caught our attention was that FAST and AVOD platforms actually share that ease of use benefit that cable is known for. And that could be a marketing communications opportunity for FilmRise and some of others in the space. The ad-supported ecosystem is an ideal means of content discovery for those who can't afford it, or as we're finding from the study, simply just don't want another subscription, credit card line item, a username or a password.
Yeah, this insight right here is what was most validating to FilmRise. Ultimately, ease of use is what we want to reflect the most. Our app does not require a login, does not require passwords. As soon as you download the app, you're ready to watch. In terms of cost efficiency, it's free. So it was really nice to see that these these components of our user experience that FilmRise focused on are motivators for our core audience. And we look forward to serving them even more going forward.
In closing, we don't think we're putting ourselves out there too much when we say the era of explosive SVOD user growth has come to an end. But now we're stepping into a new and exciting phase where consumers are curating their own kind of bouquet of SVOD, AVOD, and FAST platforms, allow them to prioritize budget, content, variety, ease of use. Tejas?
Yeah, hopefully these findings provide some food for thought, and we look forward to continuing the conversation going forward with all of our ad partners. Thanks a lot.
All right, hello, and welcome to The Grill, Focus on AVOD, presented by FilmRise. I am Brandon Katz, a senior TV reporter at TheWrap, and I am a proud couch potato. And I think that makes me uniquely positioned to ask our panel of experts all about the television industry and the ever-fluid landscape we are experiencing right now. Before we dive into our conversation, let's just go around the digital room for some quick introductions. Daniel, let's start with you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Chrisman. I'm currently SVP of the cross-platform group at Screen Engine ASI.
Tejas, how about you?
Hi there, Tejas Shah from FilmRise. I am SVP of Commercial Strategy and Analytics.
Katina?
Hi, everyone. I'm Katina Pappas-Wachter. I lead our ad sales strategy for the Roku channel here at Roku.
And Alicia?
Hello, everyone. I'm Alicia Dino. I work for Global CTV Ad Server Publica.
So as you can see, just from those brief introductions, we have a lot of smart people plugged into the industry for this panel. So I'm excited to learn. I hope everybody else is too. And just to start things off, one result of the study that you guys put out that immediately stood out to me is that AVOD, advertising video on demand, is quickly becoming the first touch point in most Americans' living rooms. And I'd love to go around this digital room to hear from, a content tech publisher and broader industry's perspective, what the ripple effect of AVOD becoming the epicenter of the media experience will be in each of your given corners of the industry. And Daniel, let's start with you again.
Yeah, I think from the market research side, we're expecting everybody to kind of want to delve in, clients specifically, and kind of figure out how this industry is evolving. And we're at a time right now when the terms AVOD and FAST are still new to everybody. But once a lot of the major players in the space are kind of able to come to a shared understanding, we really expect the industry to change and evolve, and we're right on the precipice of that now.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I think that AVOD and FAST have both kind of flown under the radar for the past few years. I think it came more into the cultural lexicon in 2021 and definitely to the forefront in 22. What that means to me is sort of thinking about the evolution of what our value proposition is. I think there was a lot of innovation and experimentation happening till now. And now that we're kind of hitting a critical mass in terms of the size of the audience, we need to make sure that we're sort of a relatively mature product. Because it's modern technology, there's always going to be iterations, and that's exciting. But ultimately, we need to be able to differentiate ourselves from traditional TV and show the audience that we value them and why they should be using AVOD and FAST as opposed to other media. And that includes social media, which is now getting a lot of eyeballs as well.
Yeah, I think, cord cutting has obviously accelerated, and at Roku, we've really just tried to make cord cutting as simple and enjoyable as possible. I think the next frontier here is making the advertising experience better. The ad experience in linear was unchanged for so many years, and there's so much that streaming can build on, learning from a lot of that, but also making it dynamic for different people and the way that they want to enjoy content. So I'm really excited to see how that evolves.
I actually love this question. So thank you for kicking it off like this, and I'll counter it with a fun fact. The great shift to AVOD is a consumer trend that was always happening pre-pandemic. So the trend that was trending is still trending, right? And the world changed rapidly. Every household experienced a global lockdown, which naturally accelerated AVOD discovery. I also think there are other variables to consider that we often maybe don't talk about, like the cost of living crisis, right? So prices increases on everyday items, which will naturally have people looking for more affordable ad-supported streaming services or ad-light SVOD services.
Well, Alicia, I appreciate the compliment you led off with, and I will tell everyone here that flattery will get you everywhere in this panel. So just keep that in mind over the next 45 minutes. But something I'm particularly interested in, because I remember the early days of AVOD where, no disrespect to this brand, but I would see the same laggy Geico commercial over and over and over at every single ad break. So Katina and Alicia, I'm particularly interested in your viewpoints of how the AVOD model has developed over the last decade from both a tech standpoint and a consumer experience standpoint, because we are clearly at a much more advanced stage than we ever have been.
Yeah, Alicia, I can kick this off for us. So I agree actually with Alicia's sentiments. This has been something that we've been seeing at Roku for years. We launched the Roku channel about 5 years ago because we saw over and over again that our users were searching for the word free. They would buy a Roku device and then they'd be like, wait, I have to authenticate? That's confusing. So agree with you. When we launched, it was definitely a little clunky and the content was maybe a little stale, but that has also increased tremendously over the last 5 years as well. So I think it's about learning quickly and being nimble and actually understanding what your users want, doing, surveys of your users, understanding what they need. I think FAST was also another iteration of that. We were largely video on demand and learned that cord cutters, as they were coming to the Roku channel, wanted a lean back experience too. They were used to watching linear TV for so many years that they wanted the duality of, I can surf like I do on Netflix and, lean in and, go between pieces of content, or something where they could sit on the couch and watch one fast channel and not have to think so much. So I think, again, really looking at that data, seeing who's leaning in to what, and programming accordingly, and also building, again, as I mentioned earlier, the ad experience to sort of pair together there will just increase engagement and reach overall.
Yeah, listen, I agree. I think TV viewers will always pay for content they value and can't find elsewhere. This is why I believe content is king. However, TV viewers are on a journey at the moment. Sometimes they like scheduled TV, which is why we are seeing a resurgence of fast services. Others, it's all about the immediacy of content consumption, right? Which is why we see people leaning into an on-demand service. I think it's user-driven, and users have varying taste. And I also think, CTV is the newest kid on the block, right? So like Katina had mentioned, I think apps are evolving, the way they're building ad breaks are evolving, because we're leaning in and building based on where the industry is going, and how we're curating the user experience.
I love that you both are really emphasizing the user experience and how user-driven this medium is, and how it is nimble compared to essentially the traditional entertainment model remaining unchanged for decades. So just to open this back up to everybody, what is it about over-the-top platforms that allow them to be more dynamic and fluid than their legacy counterparts?
Yeah, I think I can kick that off. I think just to piggyback off of what Katina and Alicia just said, it is the optionality of the experience. Having no ads, limited ads, or that lean back experience that a fast linear channel has. And also, leveraging modern technology, leveraging the broadband infrastructure, and the ability to customize user interfaces or customize discovery. That's a capability that didn't exist in the legacy world. And I think that one of the detriments of that traditional bundle was, having to pay for a huge package of channels where you might be using 20%, if not that. So now we're creating that level of customization, and we're offering a lot for free, most importantly. So acknowledging the audience and kind of bringing them to the forefront of the services, emphasizing user experience and making sure that we engage the audience as best as possible, I think is the ultimate value add.
It's really exciting that there's been so much growth in this space, yet there still is room to continue growing. And as all of us on this call are kind of talking about the fact that the audience and user are always first, as we're able to continue optimizing that experience, there's that much more growth to continue on in this space.
And I think at this point, if you're an advertiser and you're looking for that adult 18 to 49 audience, you have to come to streaming to get it, right? For the first time in second quarter, Nielsen reported that adults 18 to 49 were spending as much time streaming as they were in linear TV. So that was something that we all saw coming, right? But for it to actually happen, and to Daniel's point, that's only the beginning, right? We don't think it's just going to plateau there, right? So I think Alicia mentioned this too, but consumers have way more choices now. So we really have to speak to them in a way that works for them, or they'll go somewhere else and do something else and be on another screen. So it's really up to us to make sure that we're being dynamic and nimble, as I mentioned, to continue that growth.
I was just reading an article about this very thing. Traditional TV advertisers would cast a wide net, right? Like I was reading the I Love Lucy, Philip Morris was hoping that he was reaching smokers, but we all know that he wasn't, right? A whole family, a whole household would be watching that show. And that's something so exciting for advertisers to understand with CTV, right? They can actually reach a very specific user inside of what they're pushing as a brand. So I agree with everybody on the panel. I think the world's evolving, digital is evolving. I think we're going to see some of that transition over into CTV. And because it's so new, there is a bit of a growth spurt. So there is still a lot of room for everybody to figure out best practices and figure out what that evolution looks like as an industry together for the first time.
Just to piggyback on what Alicia said, I think there's an alignment between not only the consumer's experience or the audience experience, but also the advertiser's experience. And I think that that's a really cool dynamic to show respect to both, and whether it's, you know, not inundating the consumer with advertisements that they don't want, or giving that level of targeting or addressable audience that the advertisers want. We're finally aligning those two goals, and so that's really exciting.
And I just think adding fuel to this fire is the fact that U.S. cord-cutting households are projected to overtake U.S. pay TV households in the next 3 years. So, like you guys all said, we are at a nexus point, but growth is still very much up ahead, and we are still seeing massive changes. And I think to that point, we have seen Netflix lose subscribers in each of the past 2 quarters. Other streamers, such as Peacock, have remained flat. We're obviously still waiting to see what happens with, Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, HBO Max. But what, if anything, does this potential deceleration of pure SVOD growth say about the industry at the moment and the viability of AVOD and FAST, which is what we're all here to talk about?
I was just going to say, I think the point of entry is really important. Like someone made the point earlier about having so many wasted channels when you're buying, a large cable package and you're watching 3 things. Like, I do still believe in SVOD, and I think that, as new products come out, users are going to test them and subscribe to them. And some people will forget to unsubscribe, however it works, but they'll always need AVOD to complement that and to actually, round out their debundled cable or, traditional broadcast offerings. So I think as long as, again, we're doing the right things to make sure that the content's there, the ad experience is there, that will continue to be the case no matter how many SVOD services. And if anything, we've all learned that people who, launched as a traditional or a SVOD only service do need those ads. Netflix, Disney Plus, they're prime examples of that. And Hulu's been very successful in the way that they've had options for the last, 5 or 6 years. So I think that trend will continue to emerge as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's exactly that, the hybridization of all of these models, combining SVOD, AVOD, and FAST together. It also speaks to the economic realities that we're in right now and what has happened in terms of SVOD stacking. It's just not everyone can be direct to consumer, and we're kind of seeing the fallout of a little too much of that. And so, yeah, ultimately seeing hybrid models, I think is what we're going to see going forward. And speaking to the viability of AVOD and FAST, it just underscores that ads aren't necessarily a bad thing. I think that Netflix kind of made it a bad word initially, and I think that now we're seeing the legitimization again of advertising, and how consumers don't mind them and actually really want, the same way they want content discovery, also want product discovery as well.
It's super fascinating, right? I mean, SVOD services for the first time are exploring ad light options for users. So I think it's where the industry is heading, because I think it's more about the user's choice versus subscription or ad supported. So I actually think both will always exist in our ecosystem. It'll just be about user preference. And I also kind of think users follow content. I mean, so if 4 seasons of a show live across 3 CTV apps, users are going to flow in and out of both AVOD and SVOD services to continue consuming that content. I think we're seeing it happen now, which is why I kind of like the collaboration that's happening across OS systems, devices, apps. And I think as we watch those bundles continue, it's only going to help consumers understand discoverability.
And isn't that the beauty, though, also of AVOD, right? Is it feels like this really crowded ecosystem, but has anyone ever met a consumer, or even any of us, who doesn't want more, better, diverse content? People will always be searching for that. And again, the beauty of AVOD and FAST channels is that they've almost entirely removed that barrier to entry. So as audiences and consumers are moving in and out of all of these services, AVOD and the technology and the evolution is making it that much easier.
To be fair, Daniel, I think my 70-year-old father could subsist on World War II content alone for the rest of his TV viewing life. But of course, that is a minority. You're right, that we all want a diverse slate of content. And I want to stick with this idea of hybridization for a moment, because another thing that stood out to me from the FilmRise Screen Engine study is that 60% of streaming users use both AVOD and SVOD. Now, on the surface, I think that this somewhat suggests that we're just remixing the cable bundle of old. And there has been a small kind of minority concern from some consumers that we are heading in the same direction. But you guys have touched on it already, but I wonder if you could expand. How does this new medium, SVOD, AVOD, and FAST combinations offer an evolution of that as the existing model? How does it improve and provide a better experience for consumers that essentially builds on what we've had while still offering something new?
I think that the key value proposition is that being built on an over-the-top infrastructure, the level of data that we have as a platform and as a content aggregator allows us to cater to the audience a lot better. It allows us to understand user behavior, at the granularity of every second of the day, and help the user out with, whether it's content discovery. If we see that the user is, searching for a very long time and then ultimately not watching any content at all, which is a behavior we see often. What we did was we optimized our discovery algorithm in order to cater much more or much better to the individual user. That's just not possible in the legacy infrastructure, and that goes both ways. Again, the aligning of the advertisers' goals and the consumers' goals. So again, leveraging analytics, leveraging data to provide for advertisers a value proposition, saying you can target this user specifically. They are, and also from the user's perspective, assessing, are you open to this ad? Or this type of ad or this type of format, and being able to customize for that.
The advent of the SVOD players did something amazing, right? It put these massive libraries of content at consumers' fingertips for the first time. That's a really big deal. I mean, it's done in music, obviously, as well. Changes the way we all consume. But I think that, in our heart of hearts, if we had really sat and thought at the time, Brandon, as you were mentioning, that Netflix kind of had this narrative that ads are bad, we kind of all knew that it would come full circle in a way. But just because we're feeling that it's come full circle, it doesn't mean that we haven't taken a massive leap forward. And it makes so much sense that AVOD has come to kind of be a partner and remove that friction for consumers as they're looking for additional content. Despite the fact that we still think that the SVOD services are fulfilling a really important function for consumers in delivering this massive amount of content to let people all find what they want.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, I mean, ultimately, having all of the content at your fingertips is an advent in itself. Just having that ability to rediscover old things, or what FilmRise really prides itself on is having been able to reintroduce old classics to younger audiences that were not even born when these things aired. So that's a really fun part of what I do, is kind of assessing where something old might apply to or appeal to a newer audience, or vice versa, bringing digital native and user generated content to older audiences.
Yeah, Tejas, to that point, I think every fellow 90s baby, such as myself, has that, oh my God, I've just discovered Cheers for the first time moment. And it is a special sort of full circle function of these platforms that help funnel what is old, what is new content to users. And I think it's a great way to keep people on the hook. Now, I am curious to kind of go a little bit more macro. Disney just claimed it set a $9 billion record at its upfront, with 40% of that going to digital. Comcast said it had a huge upfront as well, with a significant portion of that ad money going to digital. It has been growing over years, but are we at a point where advertisers will begin truly significantly rerouting even more resources away from traditional media and towards digital for the foreseeable future?
I think it really depends on the brand. We're seeing, different brands feel differently about it. I think there is still power in linear TV. I work at a streaming company, but I'm not gonna try to counter that. The Super Bowl still does reach millions and millions of people in one sort of moment, right? And I think there's definitely power there. I think a lot of what we've been reading in the upfront doesn't surprise me. I think we've seen the last 3 years, it has definitely accelerated. And the I'll call them the savvy or smart buyers are definitely leaning more heavily into streaming. One thing that's been really exciting at Roku is, when I started negotiating upfronts here, we were sort of at the tail end of those conversations. I used to be a TV buyer. I remember, okay, Memorial Day, you start with broadcast networks, you progress through cable, and then you do sort of the digital and the unwired networks at the end, right? We now are part of the earlier conversations and announced that we closed our first $1 billion upfront, which is super exciting and obviously a huge milestone for our team. So I do think that, there's still a ton of growth there and people are definitely still spending in linear and they should. But we are earlier in the conversation, which I think is a sign that buyers know how important the audience is. And again, I think it comes back to that younger viewer and knowing that the key demographic for advertisers for as long as I've been in advertising is that 18 to 49 audience. And if you want that audience, that's digital and streaming first.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we're following the trends, and I think the whole world follows the trends, right? As do advertisers. So if I think about it, a more traditional TV ad budget that enters CTV is going to have expectations to provide the same level of data and transparency that is a part of the TV linear ad buy. And when I think about it that way, I think CTV apps that make it easily available to advertisers will likely see these budgets versus those that are a bit more guarded around their data. But I think advertisers have to reach their audience, and their audience is streaming content. Their audiences are accelerating how much they stream content. So it's going to be a big part of what they plan for their years now.
And actually, that's a great point, Alicia. And I think that this isn't something that just happens every upfront year. It's the in between that really matters. It's the education, the data that the streamers can provide. And I think one of the best parts about working at Roku is how consultative we can be with our clients to show them, like, look, we're just giving you the information. You can make the decision on your own. But we didn't have that luxury, when we were just relying on Nielsen ratings, right? So there's just so much more data that we can tell the story of how this is evolving and how it contributes to their bottom line. Almost all of our upfront partners have, some sort of measurement learning agenda baked into their entire upfront, their upfront year. And that has been tremendously important in showing the value and actually putting our, money where our mouth is. So that's it. That's a huge, huge point.
Yeah, I mean, look, every week we see a new press announcement that a major broadcaster has partnered with this verification company or this measurement company. So everybody's talking about best practices and how do we actually show measurement on viewability or how do we actually show the data of where the ads delivered. And so I think we're all coming to a place where we're pushing each other to do better, to support streaming content, to support advertising measurement, to be able to do supply path optimization, buy path optimization, and to leverage that in our day-to-day negotiations. And I think Katina's right. Like, where we didn't have that transparency before for streaming inventory, we had it for digital. So for the first time ever, we're able to say, hey, we've been doing this in digital and it's been working. And now we can actually push to apply that over here on the TV side of it as well.
Coming all the way back to the question, I think that as industry analysts, that is how we will know that this market has become mature. It's when those ad dollars catch up and we start seeing the upfront spend matching the audience size. And I think we're working our way there, but it will be really interesting for us to keep an eye on that.
So on this trajectory that we're seeing in the industry, audiences vote with their wallets. They have the deciding power And I thought what was interesting in the study is that it showed that just 1 in 5 consumers plan to add an additional SVOD service in the next year. And 79% report keeping or even reducing their current subscription. I think consumers have had it amazingly in terms of volume of quality choice. But do you guys think that the industry is on the verge of entering a period of consolidation and potentially even a reduction of major players?
I actually think it might be the wrong question. I think we're in the early stages of app discovery. I think the real question is, what does the future of search look like in TV? How do they continue to promote their services on devices? How do they stay relevant? I mean, we all understand on this call and in this panel how to access apps on our TVs and the differences of where you can go to access content. However, not everyone else understands how to discover more content, new apps. I mean, it's getting so granular in a way where my mom's in town visiting and she doesn't understand that if she clicks a show in Apple TV Plus, it pushes her over into a brand new app that just launched this year, right? So I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on that. I think that's the question. How do we make this searchable and discoverable for the audiences that are accessing this content every day?
Yeah, I mean, to that end, it goes back to it's a challenge and an opportunity at the same time. Where the having or leveraging digital technology allows us to be in this environment where searchability is actually a thing, and creating that discovery is definitely going to be reliant on data and analytics, and that's why I hope there's a little bit more democratization of that. So that we're all on the same playing field and able to surface to the audience what it is exactly that they want. I mean, I think that we really should be taking the lead of what we've seen in the digital landscape in terms of search keywords, everything that's happened with Google and AdWords and within that industry, even in Facebook and Snap, et cetera. That level of customization in terms of discoverability or being able to push to individual consumers according to their preferences, I think is going to be hugely important going forward.
I don't think, I agree with Alicia that it's probably less about the consolidation and more about share shifting and how much time is spent in each of these different arenas. I think it'll also show heavily in the way that publishers program. You need to have a mix of sort of the nostalgic content that's more efficient and provides just engagement, and then you'll also need original content to bring in new users and have users. Someone made the point earlier that users follow content. I totally agree with that. If all of your friends are watching something, especially if it's ad supported and the barrier for entry is super low, the user will follow that much more easily. So I think there's more a share shift happening, and it'll allow us to understand if that consolidation trend is next. The one thing I will say on the consolidation piece is we've learned that the more content that you can put in one place, the better engagement is, because users do like spending more time in one place rather than having to juggle between a million apps. So that doesn't mean necessarily that content publishers are going to shut their doors, but is there a way for us to make the UI of any of these interfaces of the streaming platforms more aggregated? So the users recommended things that maybe does cross between different apps in a way that's obviously economically sound to all the providers, rather than the onus being on the user to jump between one app to the other. We've seen the number of apps that users access on a monthly basis go down. They're spending more time and less. So I do think that will continue, especially as people get their sort of cord cutting routine down.
So I'll shamelessly plug Roku on Continuo's behalf, which is I love, to her point, in terms of having a UI that aggregates and creates this great user experience. On Roku, the featured free section to me is something I absolutely love. And it's a little bit selfish in that we often see FilmRise's content being featured there. But it's just incredible to just have these curated rows of content, but they're all from different apps. And so that ability to interact with all these different apps in one place, in one store, I think is, and Apple TV Plus does this to an extent. There's a lot of different channel stores that are attempting to do this, but I definitely think that is the future of content discovery.
Yeah, the genie is clearly out of the bottle, right? It's going to take quite some time for there to be any significant aggregation. But in the meantime, I think what we're all saying is, to whatever extent we can make that experience more seamless for audiences, we're going to see viewer time continue to increase. And I think that's kind of the overall goal of the industry.
Everyone is talking a lot here about content discovery, app discovery, and kind of seamless convenience for the user. I'm curious because in the pandemic, studies have shown that streaming usage among older demographics, people who have not cut the cord, has actually increased. And I'm curious, moving forward, how important is it to target those demographics and to continue broadening the type of user demographic bases that streaming services attract? Because that seems to be a huge untapped market that is still finding its footing.
Yeah, I mean that's core to FilmRise's strategy and overall company thesis. It's introducing content and I mentioned this before, but taking nostalgic content, introducing it to a younger audience, and then vice versa. Showing these new older audiences, to your point, what is this content ecosystem that has been developed over several years that they hadn't been a part of until now. And I think that we're seeing great reception of that, where older audiences are enjoying that they are being introduced to a new format. And even then, some of these formats aren't necessarily new. They're just innovations or evolutions of what has been known for a long time. So that diversity of audience is hugely important to us. And I think that the Wall Street Journal published that statistic most recently, that the greatest contributor to streaming growth over the past year has been those aged 50 and older. And that's really exciting to me, to have that opportunity to now speak to the whole, all of demographics and be able to offer up a diverse catalog of content.
Yeah, I think streaming is mainstream now, which is really exciting. I think for it to get anywhere close to the power of linear television, it has to be mass reach. So I've spent a lot of time in this panel sort of plugging the 18 to 49 audience, but the 50 plus audience should not be ignored here. And I think it also just shows, how seamless the experience is, that, people who have been watching linear TV for 30 plus years are making that shift and staying cord cutters. So I think it's a good thing to have a diverse audience watching. And to Tejas's point, the content needs to speak to them. And I think we also see, an adult 50 plus watching sometimes the same thing as somebody in their 30s. So that's positive. And I just think, lastly, as it relates to advertisers, that's where the messaging matters. Alicia used the I Love Lucy example earlier. I think the beauty of this happening is if an advertiser doesn't want to reach that audience, they don't have to anymore. They can just buy the demo that's important to them, that they know will move the needle for their brand. And then there's also options for people who want, mass reach, that it's a product that no matter how old or young you are, you need it. They can do that too in a really efficient way.
Yeah, I was just thinking about my mom being in town, right? And how she used to watch TV, like how she grew up watching TV was a set day schedule. The news comes on, or the show airs its new episode on a certain day. And it's been really exhilarating to introduce her to streaming. I think she said something like, how many hours can I watch of that show? And I don't want to plug that show, but that show is epic and everybody was rushing to watch it. And yeah, so it's actually just educating an older audience that's already been consuming on ridiculous levels more traditional TV into accessing streaming, where like Tejas and most of us have mentioned, nostalgic content, both TV shows and movies. I can't even tell you, my partner's father was talking about all the westerns he used to love and how he hates just waiting for them to come on traditional TV. So we got to actually introduce him to a streaming app that has a whole section for that. So I think we're seeing a different togetherness at the household level, right? I think that's what I'm talking about. Is you're seeing people coming together, educating older people in their family on how to access this stuff. I was just showing my mom how to use the remote confidently for the new Apple device. So I think we all come together to watch shows. We all come together to share in that. I mean, half the time my colleagues and I are talking about the latest movie or TV show, or we're educating the younger colleagues of ours on more traditional stuff. And I think that's something that's never going to stop. That's something that's always going to happen. So there's always going to be room. So then I just go back to that idea of easy discoverability, right? When my mom goes home, is she going to be able to go and find that? And I think, like you guys have mentioned, there are certain apps that are really focused on promoting content that might direct you to another app. And I think that's a really strong place to be. But I do love it. I think we're in a more thoughtful industry right now. All of us on this panel are constantly thinking about users. We're thinking about each other and how we partner and help each other and support each other. And that is a really great place to be.
And to your point, Alicia, my mother still thinks the term is blitzing TV, not binging TV. So it has been fun to help her, leap forward into the 21st century in certain regards. Now, piggybacking off these last couple questions, Amazon Prime Video is an added value to Prime subscribers. The Disney bundle offers 3 separate services for roughly, the price of one. I'm curious, do you think we'll see a renewed emphasis on this type of creative bundling and added value moving forward as the competition for subscription dollars, ad dollars, and eyeballs increase?
I think it's all of the above. So everything that we've just talked about in the past 40 minutes or so, it's creative bundling, it's hybridization, it's content discovery. It's all of these kind of user-focused or user-centric applications that we've been able to develop because of the advancements of technology. I think that is going to be at the forefront of how we go moving forward. Creative bundling is still a bifurcation, to be honest, of the actual cable bundle. So then how do you bundle bundles? That will be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I think it's all about testing and learning all of this, right? Like, I think the reason that all of these companies are able to do that is because they understand in real time how it's impacting their bottom line, how they're retaining users, how they're drawing new users, how it's increasing engagement. So I think if it weren't for that sort of quick learning and failing fast model, it would be a lot tougher for anyone to do anything creative. So I think that's one of the things that makes me most excited about working in this industry is, you can test and learn and continue to iterate on your strategy rather than just be like, I think I have a good idea. So I think that will definitely continue for sure.
Yeah, and to whatever extent entertainment has completely broken through all silos and become integrated with every aspect of technology and daily life, that just means that there's more opportunities for the discovery that we're all talking about. So finding all of these partners, amazing partners that we've all worked with, across CPG and tech, these are great avenues for content discovery and ultimately have really helped to fuel that explosive growth that's let all of us kind of work in this awesome space.
And I think actually sort of building on that, there's also just a lot of cool partnerships that aren't even all content driven, right? We've seen a lot of examples where content publishers are partnering with food delivery services. So, I think there's a lot that it's creating, sort of opening doors between industries that wouldn't have been open before, which is awesome.
I mean, I think all of us were blown away by the way we started this year off with the Super Bowl having a QR code, right? So I think everything is on the table. Anything is possible and attainable. And like Katina had mentioned, we're in an environment where we actually can test. we can be forgiven for a mistake and relaunch it. And so I think it's an incredibly fun time. I see ads that I've never seen in a TV space on my connected TV devices when I'm streaming. And that's also very exciting. Thinking about the advertisers that traditionally didn't have the budget to get their ads on a TV environment now have the opportunity to actually reach their audiences, and their audiences are in streaming. So I would agree. I think discoverability, the ease and the simplicity of that is going to keep pushing this forward.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting to think of the TV as a brand discovery. We've been talking a lot about content discovery, but finding a new brand through your television, I think we've all become so used to it in social, but as we're seeing this in real time as users, it is happening on the largest screen in the house, which is obviously such an amazing storytelling vehicle. So I'm really excited to see how that continues and gets more brands involved.
Now, last quick question, I'll get everybody out of here. Throughout this conversation, we've been talking about both micro and macro details about the industry. I want to switch focus a little bit. What do you think is the most overlooked element of the streaming industry in each of your respective areas right now? A storyline that isn't receiving as much attention as it should.
I think from the content perspective, and this is a little bit playing into some of the themes we've already talked about, but in terms of bringing in new content, the diversity of content, whether it's from countries outside of North America in different languages, or whether it's user-generated content. One initiative that we've been working on recently is taking digital native content that was previously 7 minutes, developing longer form episodes out of that, and creating fast channels based on that type of content. So the diversification of the content ecosystem and sort of the democratization of that, I think, is really interesting. It's not just your major studios that are able to create content right now. It goes down to the individual user at this point, and that's really cool to me.
I think building on that, multicultural is probably an area that we don't spend enough time talking through. I think it's awesome, again, that we've reached mass scale in these areas. But to Tejas's point on the democratization of content, you used to have a day part that served different multicultural audiences, and that's great and that worked. But this allows it to be more nuanced. There's so many U.S. Multicultural audiences that speak both languages and want to be talked to with cultural relevance, but also with content that might be in English, right? So I think that coming together, and so multicultural is one. My other one would probably be TCOM. I wouldn't say it's overlooked. I would just say it's nascent. We've been talking about interactive on CTV for years with partners like Brightline and Innovid, and I think it's been like a nice to have for a lot of brands. But I'm really excited to see how that continues to evolve and gets better. People used to say that there was no way that people would shop on their phones, right? And now look at us. So I think that is sort of the next iteration, and it'll be really fun to see what we can do both from the advertiser perspective, but then also the value that it provides to our users.
I think I selfishly feel like we're not focused enough on building the right ad break and the right ad experience. To Katina's point, like in-language ad unit for in-language content, right? So I think it's something that is being discussed. Frequency capping is a major buzzword, but I also think people aren't talking enough about the right technologies being utilized to support this type of inventory, this type of content, right? Building an ad break for a content owner who has distributed content over into another app. There are walled gardens where the ad stacks aren't talking to each other. So I'd love a world in which we focus a little bit more on that. But again, it's selfish as a global CTV ad server to be asking for that.
No, this is a great segue because I just wanted to touch on this really briefly before we all wrapped. The concept that potentially viewers want or are not conscious of the fact that they want an ad break. And I think that as Katina was mentioning, mobile usage, we're all multitasking right now. At one point, it was kind of a buzzword, like the concept that you're using two screens, but now it's just so native to all of our experiences. But I think that that's really going to help fast channels as we move forward, that the right break is actually something that people want. So we'll really be able to capitalize on that. And that's, a perfect opportunity for our ad partners.
I really want to thank everybody for taking the time to come for this discussion today, because you know what? I feel like I could go teach a lecture on it based on the expertise I've absorbed from all of you guys. I really appreciate it. I hope maybe next year we can all reconvene and take the temperature once again of this ever fluid, ever evolving landscape. So thank you guys again.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Brandon.
Thank you.